Our present goal is to get up to 100. We have got several really prominent religious leaders from this country and around the world who have already signed. And we do have a very impressive set of readings on there by many leading theologians and philosophers of religion. So I encourage you, if you want to do some reading about 9/11 from a Christian or Jewish or Muslim, or and we're working on getting Buddhist and Hindu and other contributions, from that one of those points of view, go on there and find out what is available. Also, very recently, political leaders for 9/11 Truth, which already includes past or present members of the parliaments of Japan, Italy, Sweden, the United Kingdom, and Europe, and a former United States governor. Accordingly, people who have thought of the 9/11 movement as constituted by individuals who can be dismissed as conspiracy nuts, even morons and idiots, need to reevaluate. That is, if they want their opinions to be based on the real world. Here is the present situation, and if you're going to quote any one sentence from tonight's lecture, I would suggest this one. I know it's important because it's in italics. Among independent scientists and professionals in the relevant fields who have studied the evidence, the weight of scientific and professional opinion is now overwhelmingly on the side of the 9/11 Truth movement. Whereas well over 1,000 such people have gone on public record questioning the official conspiracy theory, there are virtually no scientists or professionals in the relevant fields who have gone on the record in support of that official conspiracy theory, except for those who are not independent. That is, those whose livelihoods depend on their continuing to give public support to the official theory. Now, this caveat is most important because of the famous statement by Sinclair Lewis, 1935. He said, "It is difficult to get a man," now this is 1935, so forgive his language, "It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it." Except for such people, virtually everyone who has expertise in a relevant field and who has seriously studied the evidence rejects the official conspiracy theory. It is time, therefore, for journalists and everyone else to take a second look. Journalists often say they cannot write about an issue that is considered old news. They must have new evidence. Another reason why it is time for a second look is the existence of an abundance of new evidence. There is so much, in fact, that I can only mention a tiny portion of it. Some of this new evidence has amazingly been supplied by the FBI. This is amazing. Yeah, let's hear it for the FBI. Nothing more valuable in the eyes of God than a repentant sinner. Although the FBI was originally the agency that most laid down and defended and protected the official theory, It has recently provided several revelations that undermine this account. One example involves one of the central pillars of the official conspiracy theory, the claim that the attacks were organized by Usama bin Laden. That claim is still used to justify the American military effort in Afghanistan, which President Obama recently encouraged Europeans to support with more enthusiasm. But if you will go to the website of the FBI called Most Wanted Terrorists and look under Usama bin Laden, spell it with a U, Usama, you will find that although he is wanted for various terrorist attacks, the 9/11 attacks are not mentioned. When a member of the 9/11 Truth Movement contacted FBI orders to ask why, he reached Rex Toom, the chief of investigative publicity. And when he asked why not, Toom said, because the FBI has no hard evidence of bin Laden's responsibility for 9/11. Now, I suspect that you in the Boston Globe may have the finest newspaper in America. I mean, by a process of elimination, it cannot be the New York Times or the Washington Post, so it must be the Boston Globe. And surely, therefore, all of you have read about that, right? The Boston Globe didn't talk about this? Another example involves the reported telephone calls from the airliners, through which people on the ground were told that the planes had been hijacked by Middle Eastern terrorists. Some 15 people reported that they had been called by loved ones using cell phones. Now, there were a lot more phone calls, but 15 of them, the people said, I was called on a cell phone. United Flight 93, the plane that reportedly crashed in Pennsylvania, was by itself said to have been the source of about a dozen of these cell phone calls, so it's sometimes called the cell phone flight. Dina Burnett alone reported having received 3 or 4 such calls from her husband, Tom Burnett, from Flight 93. She knew he was using his cell phone, she said, because I looked on my caller ID and I recognized his cell phone number. However, most of these calls were made when Flight 93 was reportedly at 35,000 or over 40,000 feet. But pilots and scientists in the 9/11 movement had pointed out that given the cell phone technology of 2001, successful calls from high-altitude airliners were extremely improbable, in fact, impossible. One of our scientists, Keith Dewdney, a Canadian, who used to be quite well known, he used to write a regular column for Scientific America, so he was considered a credible guy. He decided, let's get empirical, let's test it out. So he got all the cell phones he could find, every brand, and took them up in a single-engine plane and found that they all conked out at about 9,000 feet. Then he went up in a double-engine plane, which has more insulation, and found that they all went out by 7,000 feet. And so you can imagine with an airliner, with an enormous amount of insulation, much lower. In fact, most anecdotal evidence suggests that cell phones will not work over 1,000 feet, if that.